Audible has collaborated with the Loop Lab to help me explore this topic. I was given a team and we spoke with a few different white folks who all have a history of challenging themselves or the people around them on their racial biases. I wanted to see what their experience has been with navigating their own white fragility and how they're working through it. Our society has come to a point where performative activism is at an all-time high. Showing up for marches, sharing a post on social media, and even donating money is not enough to truly create impact and change in the world. True impact comes from policy changes from the people who hold the power within this society. And a lot of the time, the people who hold the power in the society do not look like me. And my question is, why is that? Now, this project is not about answering that question because that question can't be solved if no one wants to talk about race. My goal here is to open up the conversation amongst Black people and white people to talk about the discomfort that is felt when accused of having racial biases. White people are starting to learn how to address the defensiveness and discomfort that comes up when discussing racial topics. These conversations are not easy, but they are important because this helps progress towards true racial equality. White Fragility, written by Robin DiAngelo, challenges white folks on this discomfort that is felt. I decided to read it because I wanted a deeper understanding of why white folks get defensive and uncomfortable when challenged about race. DiAngelo describes how people often feel guilt, shame, and embarrassment when accused of having racial biases. And she emphasizes the importance of not letting those feelings stop you from understanding and reckoning with your own biases.
My boy's been back. I'm not racist. My sister's boyfriend's black. I'm not racist. My sister-in-law's baby cousin Tracy got a brother and his girlfriend's black.
White fragility is what keeps our racist ecosystem afloat. And people of color can't change this oppressive system by ourselves. So it was refreshing to read this book and see a white person hold other white folks accountable. The first individual that I had the privilege of speaking with was Mindy Paulo, co-CEO of L&P Educational Services. Now, L&P Educational Services was established to redefine educational communities that are conscious of the role of race and culture play in teaching and leadership practices. And they provide the tools, skills, and knowledge for educators to challenge and disrupt patterns and policies of systematic inequities. Mindy's whole job basically is to speak about the inequities within the educational system. So I wanted to see what her comfort level is with navigating these difficult conversations around race. I asked her, do conversations about race make you uncomfortable? And if not initially, is there any point in the conversation where it becomes uncomfortable? And this is what she had to say.
So I would actually say where the discomfort comes is at the beginning. And I think it's because I have devoted a significant portion of my professional work to these issues, right? I work really closely with my colleagues around becoming anti-racist, around building culturally proficient practices, trying to mitigate the inequities. I mean, I've devoted so much time to this, but I am far from an expert in this area and I'm constantly learning. And what I find uncomfortable is not exactly knowing how people are going to react. So while I'm very comfortable with it, those that I'm having the conversation with may not be. And so for me, I always find that I'm very conscious about finding a way into a conversation that can help people feel less defensive. Because I do believe when we talk about issues of race, it does trigger, people don't have that racial stamina, and it triggers different types of emotions, whether it be emotional or psychological. And I think, understanding someone's conscious intentions is really important because quite often, even those best intentions aren't a free pass for insensitive or offensive beliefs or comments. And I've always believed and often tried to help my colleagues understand that, racist is not a requirement for racism. And so let's have this open conversation and dialogue to help bring ourselves to a common place of understanding. So I find the discomfort often happens at the very beginning until folks really know what my conscious intentions are and what it is that I hope we can gain from that collectively. To me, the reality is that race shapes the prospects of our lives. And I think it's really important for people to understand what that actually means. So there's no doubt discomfort when talking to people about issues of race and racism, and certainly among white people, that is quite apparent, usually from the get-go of any conversation.
Mm-hmm. The next person that I had the chance to interview was the Vice Mayor of Cambridge, Elena Mallon. She has done a ton of equity work in Cambridge and the greater Boston area, such as working to fix food insecurity, pipeline affordable housing, access to high-quality daycare and early education opportunities, and many more other things. She is someone who is actively creating solutions to close this equity gap. I believe Vice Mayor Mallon strives to be an ally, and it's proven through her actions. So I was curious on what her thoughts would be on the topic of anti-racism. I asked her, is she an anti-racist, and why? And this is what she had to say.
I strive to be anti-racist every day. Do I succeed? No. Do I succeed sometimes during a given day? Yes. I think, minute to minute, hour to hour, I sometimes fail and sometimes I don't. And I think that's okay, right? Everyone's on their own cultural competency journey. And as long as I'm waking up every day striving to be anti-racist and willing to stumble, willing to make mistakes, willing to learn from those mistakes, I think that's the only way that people can grow and truly be anti-racist. But at the end of the day, I think, if somebody called me a racist, I think that would be true, right? I think we have stuck this horrible thing on to a word that is all of us, right? We're all racist in some way or another. We all have bias. It's working against that bias and making sure that we're growing. That's the critical piece of this. And like I said, this is urgent. This is urgent work. So yes, I wake up every day striving to be anti-racist. Sometimes I succeed and sometimes I fail. That's okay. I'm going to get up tomorrow and try all over again.
I appreciate Vice Mayor Mallon being candid about how she is still working on being an anti-racist. It shows that she is not complacent with where she's at. She says that she strives to be an anti-racist daily, but she can't honestly say that she's perfect. I kind of wanted her to elaborate more on the action she takes to be an anti-racist, because one thing to say, it's another thing to understand how somebody implements it. And this is what she had to say.
So I think going back to, as an elected official, right, it's really looking at every policy that you're either proposing or that exists, and look at it through an anti-racist lens, whether it's, environmental policy, whether it's policies around our educational system, whether it's policies around housing and zoning. It's critical to be looking through an anti-racist lens on all of that, especially as an elected official. I think, as a mom, and as a mom of two teenagers, it's really important for me to be talking about race. It's not something that my family talked about. And so I had to go on my own cultural competency journey.
The last person I had the privilege of interviewing was Danielle Kemp. She's a nonprofit fundraiser, a disability activist, and she's a part of a Black Lives Matter vigil in Quincy, Mass. Called Quincy for Transformative Change. I asked her if anyone has ever made her aware of how something she may have said or done might be offensive to a person of color, and I wanted to see how she might have responded to it. And this is what she had to say.
Actually ran for city council last year and was trained by a program called Emerge that trains all women in all across the country, but my program was in Massachusetts, on how to run for political office. And there was somebody who posted in Emerge about, we have an alumni group that's private. They posted about a Black woman running in Quincy and how she couldn't get enough signatures on the ballot. And they were trying to make an overall point of how much harder it is for somebody who's a woman of color or any type of minority on top of being a woman, how much harder it is to get attention and funds and even the signatures you need to get on the ballot. And she happened to be running against an incumbent that I actually like. And I took it in that direction of, well, it's not really that. It's more that this incumbent is just so well liked in Quincy. It's not because she's Black, she had a problem. And it took another alumni calling me out for me to realize, oh my God, I'm not looking at this right. It may be a case that she has a strong incumbent, but why the heck shouldn't I support her like an Emerge sister would versus talking about the incumbent? I wouldn't have done that to another candidate necessarily. And now it's come around to me digging in on saying when she runs again, I'm flat out, I'm going to support you. I've already messaged her and apologized and said, when you need to get those signatures on the ballot, I'm here to help you. I will go and I will do that and I will support you, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what the incumbent's doing. You deserve your chance on that ballot too. And she is a Black woman and a lesbian, and the person that she would be running against is notoriously anti-marriage equality. So she needs to have her opinions out there, and I shouldn't have been as dense as to put it in my own context of running in Quincy. I missed the whole racism angle, and I'm glad that someone called me out, because I don't want to be in my own bubble thinking about my own experience and negating the experience and missing the overall point. I felt like a real jerk. And I'm glad that my sisters didn't get completely mad at me either. They used it as a learning opportunity of, I know you don't realize this is what you're doing, but this is how it came off to me. And I wish that you didn't have to be handled with kid gloves that way. I would have been okay if they hadn't, but I think the fact that they did that, I wasn't as defensive. This happened, God, 6 months ago now at least. And I was thinking about it ever since. Of really, in the beginning, I was defensive. I'm like, what are you saying? I derailed the conversation. But now I really have thought about that and grown a lot. So yeah, that's the most obvious one for me that really was like, wait, what are you doing?
I appreciate that my interviewees acknowledge that it takes action to be an ally, or it takes someone who's willing to challenge themselves to be an anti-racist. The goal of the hard part was to get white people to understand the importance of not being complacent with how things are. If you truly want change, you must challenge the way you view the world. Doing this is not easy, but in the end, you will open yourself up to being a more compassionate and progressive individual. I encourage white folks who watch this to have more conversations around race, but do it with the expectation that racial biases will come up in discussions. People will feel uncomfortable, but these conversations are important. Thank you for tuning into The Hard Part. I'm Taijai Slaughter. Peace.